Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, a channel, a platform, and a modality where we apply the principles of philosophy, spirituality, mysticism, and business to rapid lifestyle transformation. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to unpack the answer to another question that was given to us by one of our viewers, by one of our subscribers in the videos. And I'm checking the comments more frequently, and I'm loving the questions. Please keep them coming, and especially if they're challenging and if they're about testing the principles, if they're especially for people who are still trying to prove this to themselves, or even if they're trying to disprove us, that's great. Because as I always say, I've never shied away from controversy. I've never shied away from explaining and defending my principles, because I've always thought if it was true, if it were true, it would stand up to scrutiny. And indeed, all of the principles that I'm teaching here, I've learned them, I've studied them, many of them in formal settings and many of them self-taught, and I've tested them many times, and I'm not teaching a single principle here that I have not implemented and seen results in myself. I follow the great philosopher William James in his statement that the only ultimate proof of the truth of a philosophy, of the veracity or the validity of a philosophy, is, does it make my life better? So we're an empirically based channel. And indeed, I formally studied logic at the university level. And I've also self-studied very deeply and very voraciously Austrian economics, rational economics. So at root, I am a rationalist. And when I was first introduced to a lot of these principles, a lot of this material, I had a lot of the same challenging questions. Well, prove it. Well, how do we know that the unseen is actually underlying everything real, and so on and so forth? As we discussed in this last video, we're going to unpack this in a very big way, and in a way that I hope will satisfy the critics to at least drop their defenses just enough so that they can test out these modalities and see how they impact their lives. Because as we've said in other videos, you don't even have to fully believe in these principles to implement them. You don't even have to believe in these principles to implement them. Of course you will eventually, but they have to work whether you believe it or not. Just like you don't have to believe in the concept of the modern engine in order to start a car and drive a car. You can perfectly well operate a car without having any knowledge or even any belief in engineering. The same with these principles. You can implement them and see results, and that will make you a believer. Nay, not even a believer, it will make you a knower. And that's our goal in this channel, especially for those who are new to the principles of law of attraction, law of assumption, and for those who are testing it out. Because all of this is bent towards your rapid lifestyle transformation. I think all of us can agree that rapid lifestyle transformation is a good thing. We don't need to explain that. So, we're going to unpack this. But first, please, if you have not subscribed to our channel, hit the subscribe button below. It helps us not only to get the word out, it'll also give you alerts to a lot of our videos. And going forward, you're going to be part of a dynamic and growing community of practitioners, of intellectuals, of business people, of master manifestors who can not only manifest the beautiful and the great in their own lives, but they can also help the entire community. Because helping others is also a great impact on our own manifesting. So, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll give you a second to do that. Thank you so much for doing that. So now, I got a question from a viewer, from a subscriber, on our video about powerful manifesting on a deadline, go beyond time to get it on time. If you have not watched that video, I recommend that you watch it. It's one of our more popular ones, And it basically goes into why you should use Parkinson's law and use the Pareto principle in conjunction with the knowing that you are it and already have it to manifest that quicker in your experience. Of course, we said this is only for those who are ready, and this is only for those who are not too crazy about the deadline and not taking it too seriously. And we went into all those paradoxes. I recommend that you watch that video if you have not. So, the questioner says, okay, I gave a thought in this video that what you have to do is you have to ask yourself what you would be doing once you attain that desire, and then get on that film roll, more or less that. And the questioner is asking, let's just for a second pick up on the thought of what you said. What would you do if you had everything you desire? I'm reading from the laptop here. Here's the conundrum. I would go out and start enjoying those things, he says. Okay, and that's absolutely what I would do and what I'm encouraging you to do. Start enjoying them now. Give it to yourself now. I don't see any reason why you should not give it to yourself now. Even if it's delusional, ladies and gentlemen, because we're not saying staple a resignation letter to your boss's head and give up everything on the physical. No, we never say that. We say you need to continue on this film roll and follow the script, because of the fact if you're resisting the script on this film roll, that usually holds you in a whirlpool of energy that stops you from getting to the other film roll. But if you fulfill the script that you're already on, and then take advantage of the twists and turns of that film roll to maximize your chances of success on that film roll, and then when you have time, completely abide on the other film roll and imagine that, then you will have very good results. That's what we're saying here. So, he's saying I would go out and start enjoying those things. So when you get a moment to give it to yourself, or if you're even doing something that you don't like, but want to give yourself the experience of what you would have were you the person that you want to be, do that. There's no reason, even if you're a complete unbeliever in this, I bet you believe in virtual reality goggles, which people wear. I bet you believe in taking a vacation, which people do. All we're saying is go on a vacation in your mind more frequently until you can feel the feeling of that. Why not give it to yourself now? It just makes sense. So, now how can I do that if I'm still pretending or even creating the reality of it in my subconscious mind? But you're not pretending. And you're not consciously creating the reality of it. See, the question actually hits on a perfect distinction that I try to make more clear, and I'd like to make more clear in this video. If you're doing the imagining in order to that it will bring about the circumstances that you want, then you'll be able to do it, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of energy, and you're going to be fighting inner battles, and a lot of people give up because of those inner battles. They say, let's say they want to be a millionaire. Well, I'm imagining that I am a millionaire, but am I doing it right? And then they're peaking. Did it happen? No. Well, I must not be doing it right. And by the way, I still feel a little anxiety when I'm thinking about that. Neville Goddard and Abraham Hicks say you've got to feel it as if it were real, but I'm not feeling that. So I must be doing something wrong. So I've got to get better at my visualizations. I've got to get better at my imagining. And that screws you up. Of course you have it and you will get it. But this channel is all about giving yourself the easiest ride possible and taking the path of least resistance to getting everything that you want. You can short circuit all of that, ladies and gentlemen, and it's what we talked about in the very early videos on this channel. It's what I advise my clients all the time in our coaching calls. Any process that you do, of course you're applying it so that you'll get the end, but keep that in the back of your mind. So in the back of your mind, you can have that I'm doing this process because I know that it's going to get me where I want to be. But at the forefront of your mind, forget about that and just simply do the process for the pure joy of it, until you can even forget that you're trying to get to a goal. And when you forget that you're trying to get to a goal, that's where you're already there, you're already in the sweet spot. And so this answers, I believe, and resolves that question. And then he says, creating the reality of it in my subconscious mind. And I think that there's a mistaken view of what the subconscious mind is. The subconscious mind is only able to be seen and conceptualized within the duality. And if you look at our chart on the levels of being that we did in the early days of this channel, in which I'm going to be putting up very soon on our website, there's divinity at the top and oneness. And that is the root of everything. You are divinity, you are oneness. But within the mind and consciousness of divinity, it created this play where it split itself into observer and observed, then took on personality, then took on multiplicity and physicality, and then had the parts of that whole forget about being the whole. Of course, it has it in the back of its mind. But within the multiplicity, there remained a spark of that duality. And that is what could be called the subconscious. And that subconscious is, of course, connected with everything. It could also be known as your inner being. It could also be known as your spirit. And that's what drives all of this, ladies and gentlemen, because it's connected with everything and it makes everything happen, and you cannot question it as to its methodologies. It has a methodology that you know not of. But I'm not creating the reality of it in my subconscious mind in order to convince my subconscious mind, because in reality, at root, I am the subconscious, I am the conscious, and I am the superconscious. None of that really exists. It's all just used as a teaching tool, as a didactic platform, so to speak, in order to explain these principles. But there is no subconscious. And when it starts tripping you up, discard it. And know that it's all oneness. You don't have to convince your subconscious of anything. Of course, on the physical, it looks like you're doing these practices. You're quieting your emotions, and then the subconscious is accepting it. And when the subconscious accepts it, it takes off. But when you look at it from a unity point of view, from a holistic point of view, the you that's trying to convince the subconscious doesn't exist either. It's an illusion. And when we can just bypass that talk altogether, the journey becomes a lot more fun and a lot more smooth. Then you're just living in it now. You're not doing these processes, so to speak, so that you can create something. Rather, you know. You snap into the knowing that you are it, and then you say, I just want to experience now the piece of that I'm ready for. And then instead of looking for it on the outer, you just go into it in your imagination, in your hearing, in your speech, and you give yourself whatever part of that you need and want now. I hope we're making ourselves a little bit clear. So forget about the subconscious mind when it comes to this. The only way I can play with those things is in my subconscious mind. He said the only way that I can play with the energy is in my subconscious mind. Of course, if you tell yourself the only way that you can do it is this, then you've just created a law for yourself. Congratulations, because you make the law, so it's true for you. It's just as easy to say, I am the all and I can play with anything, because we talked about that we're here to play with the forms. So play with it. Or you can say, I can't, and my subconscious mind has to do that, and then set up an idol and set up a law for yourself. That's fine, and I wish you a good life with that. But I'd advise you to just open your heart to testing these modalities. Try to play with it. Try to approach life as play, just as the great scientists and the great creators do, and see what happens, and come back to me a month later with a testimonial of how your life has taken off. So, he said the only reason, because I cannot enjoy them in the physical, but that was not the question. So, here's the deal. There's no separation. Separation is a lie. I want to drill that into your heads. Repeat it to yourself. The great Joel Goldsmith would say, just take a year and meditate on one power. Now, it doesn't take that long. You can achieve it in an instant by not trying to convince yourself, not trying to convince your subconscious, by bypassing all that, by bypassing even feelings, and simply knowing it is that snapping into knowing. I want you to try it now. Just say, I am. I know that I am, and I don't give a damn what sensory inputs I'm getting, because that's all fake as well. And in fact, the only thing that can exist is what I let into my consciousness. And you got there now because you're not trying to change your feelings or change your emotions. Those will all change within time, but you've gone outside of time. And that's the great secret that a lot of gurus and a lot of coaches don't want you to know, because then you really don't need a long process, do you? But we give these processes for fun. But try it. Now, where was I going with this? There's no physical unless you say there is. And there's no spiritual unless you say there is. That's another dichotomy that we use it to convey in our language in order to give you certain concepts that you can put into practice, and in order to be able to communicate with one another in this multiplicity. But I tell you, there's no physicality. I want you to do this simple experiment now, because you can toggle realities. I want you to imagine yourself now driving in your car. Just do it. Now I want you to imagine yourself, you're in the car. Now I want you to imagine yourself back in your room now where you're sitting. From the car. Now don't ask questions about it. Don't ask, am I doing it right? Just do it. And I promise you, you can feel yourself in your room from your car, even though, quote unquote, physically you might not be in your car. Now get back in your car. Now imagine yourself in a boat in the ocean, driving that boat from your car. Now imagine yourself from that boat in your car. You'll perhaps still feel the wind going through your hair. You'll smell the salt water. Now imagine yourself from the boat in your room again. Now toggle between any of those you want. Go from your room to your car, to the boat. Did you do it? I ask you, what is the difference between quote unquote physical and where you went in your mind? There is no difference unless you have a thought that this is physical. And this is proven by the fact that in dreams, most of the time you have no idea where you are. 2 days ago, I took a nap, ladies and gentlemen. I woke up and I literally didn't know what planet I was on. I didn't know what time it was. I was asking myself, is it 6 o'clock? And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I took a nap. I went so deep into sleep. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no physical. Don't you see how that gives you so much power? Because you can instantaneously change the events that are happening to you now by an act of will, by an act of I am it, and by an act of I know it. You no longer have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for permission from me. You don't have to wait for permission from a religious authority or from a scientific authority or from your reason. Because, ladies and gentlemen, all reason and logic can do is reason from premises, from assumptions given it. And at root, the assumptions that you choose are totally arbitrary. That's why the great philosopher Hume said that logic is the slave of the passions. And by passion, he meant the whole inner world. And it is. Logic is only as good as its assumptions. It's a slave of its assumptions. So, people who say they're rational, we're all rational. In fact, Chesterton said that the most insane person is the most rational person because all of his stories are completely rational. They're just based on neurotic premises. So, what are your premises? Is it the premise of the slave grid, the prison grid? Or is it the premise of your freedom, your grace, and your power, and your deliberate coming here to this world to create, to live, and to enjoy? So, what if you already have these things? What is the physical? My response is, I would enjoy these things in the physical, but those things are not in the physical. So how can that happen? I think we put that to rest, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we are living in this physical life, and I'm not calling to solipsism. You're living on this film roll, and you need to take the actions of the film roll that you feel that you need to take, because that also creates resistance. Remember, also not taking an action is an action, and thought is action. It's all action. Logic is action. There's no difference, because there's no duality. Test these modalities out. Do the exercises that I just gave you. Start manifesting something very small. Imagine manifesting $100 and then be it now. And say, I'm going to, just for a day or 2 days, totally set aside what's going on in the physical, and I'm going to live in this assumption. And you can live in this film roll and be on the other film roll at the same time. You don't even have to picture it. What would you feel like now if you had the $100? You wouldn't be thinking about it all day, but you've manifested that $100 through thought alone. You'd certainly have a certain bearing about you. Well, walk as if. All of the great spiritual coaches and success coaches say, walk as if. I want you to try it and experiment it, and don't try to you can try to disprove it, but you have to suspend your judgment for a time. And when you do that, I promise you, you're going to prove to yourself in a very quick period, probably within 3 days, the great facility and the great utility of these modalities that we're teaching. So thank you very much for the question. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing coaching calls. I will put my email below. I will take you very deep into these modalities, and I will teach you the principles, and we'll go through them together about how to plan and how to rapidly transform your lifestyle, living this life the way you intended it, according to your schedule and according to your values and desires. Also, again, please subscribe and like to the channel. It helps us get the word out. So thank you so much for watching. We are going to be releasing a lot of new videos this week, not only about law of assumption, law of attraction, the philosophy and the practice, but also the nitty-gritty of rapid lifestyle transformation, how to get free from a boss. I'm telling you, within 6 months, and that's even a long time. So thank you so much, with great love and appreciation. Keep the questions coming, and I'm always at your service and at your disposal. Until tomorrow, this is Javier with great love and affection and appreciation. We'll see you soon.